Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun!
The silence in the apartment was palpable, a haunting stillness that often accompanied late afternoons. A gentle warmth bathed the room, the sunlight sneaking through half-open blinds, painting the floor with a lattice of shadow and light. Time's passage was betrayed by a lone coffee mug, left to its solitary fate on the side table, its once hot brew an afterthought. Elias stood, an ominous presence outside his sister's sanctuary, a sanctuary he was about to invade. His hand, trembling slightly, brushed through his cropped brown hair, a nervous gesture. The echo of his sister Megan's departure still rang in his ears. She had been excited, eager for adventure, leaving with friends for a weekend excursion. Now, with the apartment to himself, an idea that had been fluttering at the edges of his consciousness for months took center stage. Just a joke, he told himself, something silly to pass the time. His fingers curled around the doorknob. The door swung open with a gentle creak, revealing Megan's meticulously organized bedroom. Her closet door stood slightly ajar, a glimpse of colorful fabrics visible within. Elias stepped inside, his footsteps muffled by the plush carpet. The room smelled faintly of Megan's perfume, something floral and light. He moved toward the closet, each step feeling strangely significant.
"This is ridiculous,"
he muttered to no one, but continued forward. The closet doors opened wide under his touch, revealing rows of hanging clothes, shoes neatly arranged on a rack, and several storage boxes labeled in Megan's precise handwriting. His gaze lingered on a red satin dress hanging near the front. He reached out, fingers brushing against the smooth fabric. The material felt cool and slippery beneath his touch. Before he could reconsider, he pulled the dress from its hanger.
"Just for laughs,"
he repeated silently.
"A funny story to tell later."
But to whom? The question hovered unanswered as he laid the dress carefully on Megan's bed. A drawer in the dresser yielded black stockings, still in their packaging. Another search produced a blonde wig from Megan's last Halloween costume, some character from a popular TV show.
"This is stupid,"
he said aloud, but his heart raced with something that wasn't quite embarrassment. In the bathroom, Elias stared at his reflection. Tall, with an angular face and broad shoulders, covered by a plain gray t-shirt and blue jeans. Nothing remarkable, nothing that felt quite right, though he'd never allowed himself to examine that feeling too closely. He placed the gathered items on the counter and began to undress, folding his clothes into a neat pile. The stockings came first, unfamiliar and strange against his legs. Then the dress, which he stepped into carefully, pulling it up over his hips and sliding his arms through the sleeveless openings. The zipper proved challenging, but after some contortion, he managed to secure it. Finally, he positioned the blonde wig, adjusting it until it framed his face in waves of golden hair. Elias avoided looking at his reflection until everything was in place. When he finally lifted his eyes to the mirror, his breath caught in his throat. A stranger stared back at him. Yet not a stranger at all. The red dress hugged his waist, flaring slightly at the hips. The blonde hair softened his features, transforming his appearance in ways he hadn't anticipated. Something shifted inside him. A recognition. A quiet "oh" that seemed to echo through his entire body. His hands trembled as he reached up to touch his face, watching as the reflection mimicked his movement. The person in the mirror looked right in a way he never had before.
"Hello,"
he whispered, and the word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. He took a step back, watching how the dress moved with him. Another step. Then, impulsively, a twirl that sent the dress's hem flaring outward in a satisfying circle. A laugh escaped him. Not the mocking laugh he'd expected when this began, but something joyful and genuine. For the next hour, Elias experimented with walking, sitting, even applying a bit of Megan's lipstick. Each movement felt like a discovery, each glance in the mirror a revelation. When the time came to remove everything and return to his normal clothes, he found himself reluctant. Slowly, he unzipped the dress, carefully removed the wig, rolled down the stockings. With each item removed, he felt something precious slipping away. Back in his gray t-shirt and jeans, Elias returned everything to its proper place, erasing all evidence of his afternoon. But as he closed Megan's closet door, he knew something fundamental had changed. The joke had revealed a truth he could no longer ignore. Over the next few days, thoughts of the red dress and his reflection haunted Elias. He found himself distracted at work, staring blankly at his computer screen as memories of that moment of recognition played on repeat in his mind. When Megan returned from her trip, laden with souvenirs and stories, he greeted her with a hug that lasted slightly too long. "Everything okay?" she asked, head tilted in concern. "All good," he replied with a forced smile. "Just missed having someone around to bug." The lie tasted bitter, but the truth remained locked behind his teeth, too new and fragile for sharing. That night, alone in his room, Elias opened his laptop and hesitantly typed, "Men wearing women's clothes," into the search bar. He deleted it immediately, heart racing. After several false starts, he finally settled on gender identity questioning. Hours passed as he read articles, personal stories, and resources. Words like transgender, gender dysphoria, and transitioning illuminated parts of himself he'd never fully understood. By the time exhaustion forced him to close his laptop, a new name had taken root in his mind. Saoirse. It meant freedom in Irish. The following weekend, with Megan out at a concert, Elias once again stood outside her bedroom door. This time, there was less hesitation as he entered and approached her closet. He selected different items, a floral blouse, a knee-length skirt, and the same black stockings. The blonde wig remained, though he now knew he preferred the idea of growing his own hair out, imagining it auburn like his mother's had been. Dressed in Megan's clothes, she whispered the name aloud for the first time. Saoirse! The name felt right on her lips, a perfect fit, like the clothes that now draped her body. In the following weeks, a pattern emerged. Whenever Megan left the apartment for more than a few hours, Saoirse would emerge. Each time brought new discoveries, the way certain fabrics felt against her skin, how a slight change in posture altered her silhouette, the remarkable impact of the smallest accessory. 2 months after that first afternoon, Saoirse made a decision. Using money saved for a vacation, she purchased her own clothes, simple items that could be easily hidden among her male wardrobe, a soft cream blouse with delicate pearl buttons, a navy pencil skirt, a pair of black flats that miraculously came in her size. She ordered a proper wig online, auburn, medium length, with gentle waves that framed her face. When it arrived, packaged discreetly, she spent an hour just staring at herself in the mirror, marveling at how right it looked against her skin tone. The clothes and wig remained hidden in a duffel bag at the back of her closet, emerging only when absolute privacy was guaranteed. but their mere presence brought comfort, a promise of authenticity waiting just out of sight. One Tuesday evening, as rain pattered against the windows, Megan knocked on Elias's bedroom door. "Come in," called Elias, hastily closing the browser tab displaying women's autumn fashion trends. Megan entered, leaning against the doorframe. "So, I found something interesting today." The casual tone didn't match the sudden intensity in her eyes. Elias's stomach dropped. "Oh?" he managed, voice tight.
I was looking for my black stockings. You know, the ones I wear with my work skirts. Couldn't find them anywhere.
She paused, watching his face carefully. Then I noticed a few other things missing. A blouse. That old blonde wig from Halloween. Elias felt cold sweat break out across his forehead. I'm not mad," Megan interrupted, voice softening. I want to understand." The silence stretched between them, taut with unspoken words. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the roof. "It's not what you think," Elias began, then stopped. What did she think? And wasn't it exactly that? Megan moved into the room, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Talk to me. Please." The concern in her eyes broke something open inside Elias. Words began to spill out, hesitant at first, then gaining momentum. The afternoon with the red dress, the name Saoirse, the feelings that had always been there, unnamed and unacknowledged. Throughout it all, Megan listened without interruption, her expression moving from confusion to understanding to something like awe. When Elias finally fell silent, emotionally exhausted, Megan reached out and took his hand. "Thank you for trusting me," she said simply. Then, after a moment, "Can I meet her, Saoirse?" The question hung in the air, simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. "I'll need a few minutes," Elias replied, voice barely audible. Megan nodded, squeezed his hand, and left the room, closing the door softly behind her. Alone, Elias moved to the closet and retrieved the hidden duffel bag. Hands trembling slightly, she changed into the cream blouse and navy skirt, added the stockings, and carefully positioned the auburn wig. A quick glance in the mirror confirmed what she already knew. Saoirse had arrived. Taking a deep breath, she opened the bedroom door and stepped into the living room where Megan waited. "Hi," Saoirse said, voice catching slightly. Megan looked up, eyes widening as she took in the transformation. A moment passed, then another. "You look beautiful," Megan said finally, rising from the couch. "The auburn suits you much better than blonde." The simple acceptance in those words brought tears to Saoirse's eyes. Megan crossed the room and wrapped her in a hug, fierce and protective. "Thank you," Saoirse whispered against her sister's shoulder. "For what? Loving you?" Megan pulled back, hands on Saoirse's shoulders. "That's the easiest thing in the world." That evening marked a turning point. With Megan's support, Saoirse began to exist beyond the confines of private moments. The apartment became a safe haven where she could be herself, wearing her own clothes, using her chosen name. Megan proved an invaluable ally, offering fashion advice, helping with makeup techniques, and, most importantly, treating Saoirse's identity with respect and normalcy. "You need more variety," Megan declared one Saturday, surveying Saoirse's limited wardrobe. "A few dresses, definitely, Maybe some pants that actually fit your figure. This led to their first shopping trip together. A nerve-wracking expedition to a mall in a neighboring town where no one would recognize them. Saoirse wore simple, androgynous clothes for the journey, but carried her feminine items in a tote bag, changing in the mall restroom before they began shopping in earnest. The day yielded treasures: 2 floral sundresses in soft cotton, a structured blazer that minimized her shoulders, and a collection of blouses in colors that complemented her auburn hair and fair skin.
How does it feel?
Megan asked as they drove home, purchases securely stowed in the trunk. Saoirse gazed out at the passing landscape, considering.
Like I've been holding my breath for 30 years, and I'm finally learning to breathe.
The next month brought more firsts. Saoirse began experimenting with subtle makeup, a touch of mascara, a hint of blush, lips tinted just slightly darker than natural. She practiced her voice, working to find a register that felt authentic without straining. Most significantly, she started growing out her hair. The short brown cut began to soften, the first hints of length allowing for style options previously unavailable. She discovered her natural color was indeed auburn, just as she'd imagined, catching copper highlights in certain light.
I'm thinking of telling Oliver and Diane,
Saoirse said one evening, referring to her 2 closest friends. The 3 had been inseparable since college, sharing apartments, job woes, relationship dramas, and countless pizza nights. Megan looked up from her book.
Are you ready for that? I don't know,
Saoirse admitted, tugging at the hem of her green sweater dress.
But I'm tired of being Elias with them. It feels like lying.
The decision wasn't made lightly. For weeks, Saoirse imagined various scenarios, reactions ranging from immediate acceptance to painful rejection. She drafted and discarded numerous text messages, practiced speeches in the mirror, and once even reached for her phone to make the call before losing her nerve. Finally, she settled on an approach. A dinner at her apartment. Casual, comfortable, with Megan present for support. The evening arrived cold and clear, stars visible through the kitchen window as Saoirse prepared a simple pasta dish. She wore a burgundy blouse, tucked into a black skirt, her growing hair supplemented by the auburn wig styled into loose waves. Subtle makeup enhanced her features without overwhelming them.
"They're here,"
Megan called from the living room as the doorbell rang. Saoirse's heart hammered against her ribs. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, smoothed her skirt, and nodded to herself in the reflection of the microwave door. "I'll get it," Megan said, moving toward the entrance. Voices filled the apartment. Greetings, laughter, the familiar rhythm of friends who knew each other well. Saoirse remained in the kitchen, listening as Megan made small talk, explaining that their host would join them shortly. A deep breath. Another. Then Saoirse stepped into the living room. Oliver noticed her first, his sentence trailing off mid-word as his eyes widened. Diane turned to follow his gaze, her expression shifting from curiosity to surprise. "Hi," Saoirse said, hands clasped to stop their trembling. "Thank you for coming." Silence stretched for 1 heartbeat, 2, 3. "Elias?" Oliver asked, confusion evident in his voice. "Not exactly," Saoirse replied, moving further into the room. "I've been wanting to tell you both something important. My name is Saoirse." What followed was a conversation that unfolded over hours, through dinner, dessert, and well into the night. Questions asked with care and answered with honesty. Moments of confusion cleared through patient explanation. Old stories revisited with new understanding. "So,
all those times you seemed uncomfortable when we went swimming, Diane began. Or when you hated shopping for clothes, Oliver added. It makes sense now, Diane finished, nodding slowly. By midnight, when Oliver and Diane prepared to leave, something fundamental had shifted in their friendship. The awkwardness of the initial revelation had given way to a deeper connection, one built on truth. At the door, Oliver paused.
Thank you for trusting us,
he said, echoing Megan's words from weeks earlier.
It means a lot.
Diane hugged Saoirse tightly. You look happy, she whispered. That's all that matters. After they left, Saoirse collapsed onto the couch, emotionally drained, but lighter than she'd felt in years. That went well, Megan observed, collecting empty wine glasses. Better than I expected, Saoirse agreed, slipping off her shoes with a sigh of relief. I feel like I've been carrying this massive weight, and I just put it down. You're brave, Megan said simply. Saoirse shook her head. I'm just tired of being afraid. The following weeks brought significant changes. With her closest friends now aware of her identity, Saoirse began spending more time as herself. Her wardrobe expanded further, practical items for everyday wear alongside special pieces that made her feel particularly confident. Her hair continued to grow, reaching a length where the wig became less necessary. The natural auburn color caught the light beautifully, and Saoirse found herself touching it often, still somewhat amazed by this physical manifestation of her true self. Oliver proved particularly supportive, offering his apartment as a safe space when Saoirse wanted to venture out but wasn't ready for complete public exposure. Movie nights and dinner gatherings became opportunities for Saoirse to practice social interactions in her authentic identity with a small, trusted circle. You seem different, Oliver observed during one such evening, as they waited for pizza to be delivered. Not just the obvious changes, but something else. Saoirse, wearing a comfortable teal sweater and black leggings, considered this. I'm not performing anymore. Do you know how exhausting it is to constantly monitor yourself? Every gesture, every word, making sure it fits what people expect? Oliver shook his head. I can't imagine. It's like being in a play where you never get to leave the stage. And now... She gestured vaguely at herself. Now, I'm just reading my own lines. Diane contributed in her own way, offering practical advice from her experience as a human resources manager. You should know your rights, she said one afternoon, arriving with a folder full of printed materials about workplace protections and name change procedures. Just in case you decide to transition more publicly. The consideration touched Saoirse deeply. These friends, who had known Elias for over a decade, were embracing Saoirse with open hearts and practical support. 6 months after first trying on that red satin dress, Saoirse made another significant decision. Her job as a graphic designer allowed for remote work 3 days a week. On those days, she began living fully as herself, dressing in her own clothes, wearing subtle makeup, answering phone calls in her practiced voice. The 2 office days remained challenging, requiring a return to Elias's appearance. Each transition felt increasingly difficult, like putting on clothes that had shrunk in the wash. Technically possible, but uncomfortably restrictive. I'm thinking about coming out at work, Saoirse mentioned to Megan over breakfast one morning. She wore a pale blue blouse with small pearl buttons, her growing auburn hair pulled into a short ponytail. Megan paused, coffee mug halfway to her lips. That's a big step. I know, but this back and forth is getting harder. Being Elias feels like wearing a costume now. The conversation continued over several days, examining practical considerations and potential risks. Diane provided information about the company's policies regarding gender identity. Oliver offered to accompany Saoirse to important meetings for moral support. After careful planning, Saoirse scheduled a meeting with her direct supervisor, Hannah, a fair-minded woman with whom she'd always had a positive working relationship. The day arrived cool and bright, autumn leaves skittering across the parking lot as Saoirse approached the office building. She'd chosen to present as Elias for this initial conversation. Dress shirt, slacks, hair pulled back neatly. The familiar clothes felt foreign now, a disguise rather than an identity. Hannah welcomed her into a small conference room, face curious but open. "What's on your mind, Elias? Your email sounded important." Taking a deep breath, Saoirse began the speech she'd rehearsed countless times. "I want to talk to you about something personal that affects my professional life. For most of my career here, you've known me as Elias. But that's not who I am." Her voice remained steady despite the hammering of her heart. "My name is Saoirse, and I'm a transgender woman." Hannah's expression remained neutral, but her eyes reflected attention and consideration rather than judgment. Saoirse continued, explaining her journey, her needs moving forward, and her hope for understanding. When she finished, silence filled the room for several long moments. "Thank you for trusting me with this," Hannah said finally. "I appreciate your honesty and courage." She leaned forward slightly. "What do you need from me, from the company, to support you through this transition?" The question, so simple, so profound in its acceptance, brought unexpected tears to Saoirse's eyes. What followed was a practical discussion about timelines, company communications, and logistics. Hannah promised to consult with HR about resources and policies, but her personal support was unequivocal. "You're a valuable member of our team," she said as the meeting concluded. "That doesn't change with your name or appearance." The following weeks involved numerous conversations, paperwork, and planning. A company-wide email was drafted with care, announcing Saoirse's transition and requesting respect for her identity. HR representatives met with her to discuss insurance coverage and workplace accommodations. The day Saoirse officially came to work as herself marked another milestone. She chose her outfit with particular care, a professional burgundy dress with 3/4 sleeves, black tights, and modest heels. Her auburn hair, now reaching her shoulders, framed her face in soft waves. Subtle makeup enhanced her features without being overstated. Anxiety twisted in her stomach as she parked her car, but determination carried her forward. Oliver had offered to meet her in the lobby, and his familiar face provided an anchor as she entered the building.
"You look perfect,"
he assured her, squeezing her hand. "Professional and completely yourself." The workday unfolded with a mixture of awkward moments and heartwarming support. Some colleagues stumbled over her new name, but corrected themselves quickly. Others seemed unsure how to interact, their usual casual banter replaced by cautious formality. A few approached her desk with explicit messages of support. "The dress is lovely," commented Teresa from accounting. "That color suits you." By day's end, exhaustion competed with exhilaration. Saoirse collapsed into her car, emotionally drained, but fundamentally satisfied. Another barrier crossed, another piece of her authentic life claimed. That evening, she celebrated with Megan, Oliver, and Diane at her apartment. A small cake proclaimed "Congratulations" in pink frosting.
To Saoirse, Oliver toasted, raising his glass. For showing us all what courage looks like. Diane raised her glass as well. And to new beginnings. To being who you've always been, Megan added softly. Saoirse looked around at these faces, this family she'd chosen and who had chosen her in return. Warmth spread through her chest, a feeling of rightness and belonging that had once seemed impossibly distant. To freedom, she said, raising her own glass. The meaning of her chosen name had never felt more appropriate. 1 year after that first afternoon with the red dress, Saoirse stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom. The person reflected back bore little resemblance to Elias. Her auburn hair fell past her shoulders now, styled in layers that softened her face. Hormone therapy, begun 6 months earlier, had subtly altered her features and body. Less angular, more aligned with how she'd always seen herself in her mind's eye. She wore a forest green dress with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt, chosen specifically for today's gathering. A delicate gold necklace, a gift from Megan, rested against her collarbone. "Ready?" Megan called from the living room. "Almost," Saoirse replied, applying a final touch of lip color, a soft rose that complemented her fair complexion. Today marked another milestone, a family dinner where extended relatives would meet Saoirse for the first time. Their parents had been informed months ago, their reactions mixed but evolving toward acceptance. This broader family introduction represented another step toward living fully in the open. Saoirse took a deep breath, smoothed her dress, and nodded at her reflection. The journey wasn't complete, perhaps it never would be, but looking back at the road already traveled filled her with quiet pride. In the living room, Megan waited with car keys in hand. "You look beautiful," she said simply. "I feel beautiful," Saoirse replied. And it was true, not in a vain or superficial way, but in the profound sense of finally existing in harmony with herself. They drove to their parents' house in comfortable conversation, discussing ordinary things, work projects, an upcoming concert, plans for the holidays. The normalcy itself felt like a victory. As they pulled into the driveway, Saoirse spotted familiar cars already parked along the street. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family members she'd known all her life, but who had never truly known her. "They're going to love you," Megan said, turning off the engine. "How could they not?" Saoirse smiled, grateful beyond words for this sister who had become her strongest ally. At the door, their mother greeted them with careful warmth. Her eyes lingered on Saoirse, taking in her appearance with a mixture of wonder and adjustment. "You look lovely, dear," she said after a moment, stepping back to allow them entry. "Everyone's in the living room." The initial moments passed in a blur of introductions, explanations, and varying reactions. Some relatives embraced Saoirse immediately, complimenting her dress or hair. Others maintained a polite distance, clearly processing this significant change. One elderly aunt squinted at her before declaring, "You have your grandmother's cheekbones. I never noticed before." The comment, so ordinary and yet so affirming, brought unexpected tears to Saoirse's eyes. As the evening progressed, initial awkwardness gave way to familiar family dynamics. Conversations about politics, neighborhood news, and shared memories created a backdrop of normalcy against which Saoirse's presence gradually ceased to be remarkable. By dessert, she found herself engaged in a heated but good-natured debate with her cousin Michael about film adaptations of classic novels, exactly the sort of conversation they'd always enjoyed. "That's what I've been saying!" Michael exclaimed,
gesturing with his fork. They completely missed the point of the original text. Saoirse laughed, countering with her own perspective, conscious of how natural it felt to be herself in this setting that had once seemed impossibly challenging. Later, as guests began to depart, her father approached. He'd been quiet throughout much of the evening, his acceptance still a work in progress.
"Your mother and I have been talking,"
he said, voice gruff but not unkind.
"We'd like you to join us for Sunday dinners. Regularly, I mean, not just special occasions."
The invitation, simple as it was, represented a significant shift. Saoirse nodded, not trusting herself to speak past the sudden tightness in her throat. Her father cleared his throat.
"And, well, we're still learning, but we're trying."
"That's all I ask," Saoirse replied softly. The drive home with Megan was quiet, both sisters lost in reflection. "That went better than expected," Megan finally said as they neared their apartment. Saoirse nodded, watching streetlights illuminate the car interior in rhythmic patterns.
"It did."
"How does it feel, having everyone know?" Saoirse considered this, searching for words to capture the complex emotion. "Like I've been living in a house where most of the rooms were locked, and now I have keys to all the doors." Later that night, alone in her room, Saoirse stood once more before the mirror. She'd changed into comfortable pajamas, soft cotton pants, and a matching top in a pale lavender print. Her makeup removed, hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, she studied her reflection. The journey that had begun with a red satin dress and a moment of recognition had led her here, to this life that aligned with her truth. The path hadn't been easy, and challenges certainly remained ahead. But standing in her authentic self, surrounded by people who saw and accepted her, Saoirse knew she'd never again return to the shadows of a half-lived life. She reached up to touch the mirror, a gesture of acknowledgement to both her past and future selves. "Hello, Saoirse," she whispered. This time no one else was there to hear, but that was okay. The most important listener had always been herself.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!